lobby. Let's all go to the lobby, lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to Now Slaying, an It Slays podcast production where we break down the latest and greatest in the world of horror. I'm your not-so-humble host, Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And today on the show, we're going to be reviewing The Outwaters, which was released in limited theaters February 9th, 2023, and on VOD platforms shortly thereafter. But before we get into the review, Rowan, I want to know, are you a big fan of found footage horror movies? And if you are, or if you aren't, were you looking forward to The Outsiders?
So, this is oddly something I don't think we've ever talked about on the main show. I don't think we've ever done a found footage movie on the main show.
Paranormal Activity. I wasn't on that one, but
I tried to forget that one. So, I am, I must have went on record on that one. I am not a fan of found footage movies. I just find them really hard to get into. I'm pretty much a basic bitch. You know, I enjoy the Blair Witch Project, but I think that's just because of the age it hit me at. I went and saw it in the theater.
Nostalgia.
Yeah, so, you know, I have fond memories of seeing that in the theater with my parents and everyone being scared of it. But other than that, like, I just find that like I said, I can't get into them. I usually don't find them very effective. And I just really find that the scares don't overly do it for me in most found footage. As for this film, I actually had no idea what this was till you brought it up to do it, which is kind of odd because I was very aware of Screambox, where this, you know, they got the license to stream it in the States. And I'll save that story of when I thought Screambox was actually just a some sort of pyramid scheme marketing ploy before they launched. But, I was totally unaware about this film. What about you, Colton? Are you in the found footage, and were you looking forward to this movie?
Yeah, I was looking forward to this one, more so because an artist I follow on Twitter, and he's a fellow Canadian, Trevor Henderson, a slimy swamp ghost, put this one on my radar. And after doing a little bit of digging into it, it just seemed like something that was up my alley and like the perfect choice for Now Slaying. I'm completely opposite of you, of course. I'm a big fan of found footage horror movies, going back to the Blair Witch Project, as you mentioned, but also I love the Paranormal Activity movies as they came out and were released. I watched them in high school with groups of friends and whatnot all the time. It's basically like appointment viewing whenever those would come out. Something about just like the slow burn, looming dread, and the oftentimes authentic performances in a lot of found footage horror movies just makes the horror feel more legitimate to me, more real. And then also that grainy, lower budget aesthetic that is usually in most of these movies also allows it in like the modern age to easily like watch them online with friends, and you're not really missing much by like watching a stream of something in 720p or something, right? Like the movie's usually downsampled to look like that anyways. So yeah, suffice it to say, I was looking forward to this one, and I'd say with that, let's just roll the trailer.
I had a dream about my mom last night.
Uh-huh.
She was like coming out of like a black storm, and it was her body, but her arms were part of the storm.
I had weird dreams too.
Can I hug you for a second?
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry. There's a lot of bees.
Yeah, we need to like leave. Oh my god. I don't want to be here anymore.
Soul of Christ magnify me, body of Christ save me, blood of Christ enable me. On the side of Christ wash me, blood of Christ strengthen me, come on.
What you just heard is from the Outwaters, written and directed by Robbie Banfitch, and the story is as follows. While preparing to film a music video on location, 4 campers encounter all sorts of menacing phenomena in a remote stretch of the Mojave Desert. Now, here on Now Slang, we like to keep things relatively spoiler-free up front before getting into the more in-depth spoiler-filled discussion. So, Rowan, what are your spoiler-free thoughts on The Outwaters?
So I thought this was a pretty effective film. I was going to call it an effective little film, but it's kind of the opposite of that. This is definitely a long one, folks, especially for found footage, in my opinion.
Yeah, what was it, like an hour 55, something like that?
Yeah, something like that. To me, like I said, and it might be because I'm not into found footage, but, an hour 20, hour and a half, I'm like, that's enough found footage for me. I think longer than that, you kind of suffer that like dragging on with the kind of aesthetic that found footage brings. With that, I thought this was pretty effective in what it was doing. For the second half of it, we didn't see too much. We never see too much. Which I do, contrary to what you always say, I do appreciate sometimes, especially with kind of a no budget type film. I think that's a more effective way to get horror across than, show me anything, whether it's blood or monsters or anything in your movie that could just look terrible if you show me all of it and I know you only had $20 to do something. But I was pretty impressed with just, like I said, going into this not knowing anything about it, kind of the world building, character development that this does in the first half of the film. I think this is kind of more character development than I've ever seen in a found footage movie, where I kind of got the personality of everyone, kind of what their life situations were. Of course, we're dealing with some hippies going on, like hippie hipsters going on here. But yeah, I thought it was pretty effective. This is like one of those ones I feel like I'm gonna blab more in the spoiler zone.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Because this is just, you don't really want to ruin it for anyone. But I will say, in terms of recommend, I would definitely recommend it. I kind of would put an asterisk, like, you definitely need to like found footage, and you kind of have to be into like some weird out there ideas. Like, if you're the kind of like, you want your found footage just really like simple and I always say like popcorn, just like mainstream, I don't know how much you're gonna love this. Also, maybe stay away from it if you have severe epilepsy, because
yeah, there's definitely some flashing lights in it. Yeah, I
know that's like the thing right now. Like every movie I go into the theater, you get like the epilepsy warning.
Yeah,
and I was like, I hope to God they put one in the theaters for this, because it's just flashing lights for a good hour. Yeah, so how about your spoiler-free thoughts and if you'd recommend it?
Yeah, similar to yourself, I thought it was pretty effective for what it was working with. I did a quick Google, and it says that the budget is estimated to be $15,000. I would say it's less than that. I think most of their money kind of went to some practical effects and the camera rental, because this movie is shot on like a really professional camera, which actually is kind of a detractor for me, because I prefer when found footage is a little bit grittier and grungier. This one is like literally like a actual film camera they're filming on, because the whole premise is that they're going to film a music video, right? So they have a professional camera. But yeah, like some pros of the movie, I thought the way it opens with just like a 911 call was really effective. Like it brings you into the right mood, and kind of you're unsettled right off the bat. I think that the filmmaker does a really good job of directing your eye around the frame. Like something like this movie's been compared to a few times, like Skinamarink. I don't think it's at all like Skinamarink.
No.
Skinamarink is very much like a self-directed almost experience where, as I mentioned in that review, it's like a wandering eye movie where you're looking for things to be unsettled. You're looking for things to be like, oh, is there something over there in the film grain? Oh, did I see something move? this is very much directed. A lot of the instances or sequences in this movie take place almost like in the pitch black at night. So you literally have like the light on the film camera to like direct your gaze and to point out what they want you to see. Similarly, I thought the acting was quite competent. You mentioned that you got to know these characters better than most found footage movies. I don't know if I'd agree with that. I think it kind of follows a normal found footage, kind of like, I don't know, the flow of the movie in terms of like you just spend a long time getting to know the characters and then, some stuff happens an hour in or something, right? But I did think their acting was pretty good. It was really naturalistic. A lot of the conversations and a lot of the moments felt like they were just like ad-libbed or impromptu, which of course adds to that whole realistic found footage element. And yeah, like I said, it's effective. It does have some neat moments of horror or gore or trippy stuff in it that are worth seeking out and worth seeing. And yeah, that's about everything I can kind of say, spoiler free, that's good about the movie. A few negatives is I do think it's pretty inscrutable. It's one of those that a lot of what the narrative is trying to do or what, the ending is or what is happening for large parts of the movie aren't really explained. It's kind of just like vibes or kind of like you're left to draw your own conclusions. I do think just by the nature of a lot of it being at nighttime, it was hard to see a lot of the time what was happening, which is effective in creating horror, but also kind of a slight detractor in like, oh, what is exactly happening? All the shaky cam and whatnot. Yeah, it's definitely a slow burn. Like, it takes a while for anything to happen, even by found footage standards. I want to say it's like 55 minutes to an hour before there's actually like any sort of like dread or horror or anything happening, like just keeping it vague.
I had written down that it was 56 minutes.
There you go.
Before something happens.
Yeah, which obviously like that is a long time. This is an hour and 50 minutes. You get an hour of essentially horror after that, which once again, the latter half of the movie leaves you feeling pretty strong, I think, but it is a bit of a slog to get there. And my biggest negative that I have to mention, just so people know about it and it's out of the way before we get into the spoiler-filled discussion, is that there's a soundtrack in this, and I hate it. This is a found footage movie. Found footage movies 90% of the time don't have a soundtrack. It's all diegetic sound. It's what is captured on the found footage. And this movie, for whatever reason, there's large portions where it just breaks that and it plays music, or like someone will be capturing audio on screen, but obviously the mic isn't connected because it's like a portable mic system, and we'll hear what he's recording even though it's not connected. So it's like, okay, so whoever's reviewing the footage, they edit it all together, so we got a nice movie. Like, did they put this music in to make it scarier? It's a thing that in most movies obviously wouldn't detract, but in found footage, it's literally like a faux pas for me. It's like, no, I don't like that.
I didn't mind the music. I was like, all right. I thought it was kind of interesting that if you actually look, that Robbie Banfitch wrote most of the music. Like I think there's only 2 or 3 songs in it that aren't written and composed by him.
Yeah, it's not an issue with like the quality of the music or like that he wanted to put his music in his movies or whatever, but there's lots of moments in this movie where it's not diegetic. It's not like someone's listening to it or they're doing a playback as they're recording a music video or something. It's literally just creepy music, trippy music, and like obviously when you're looking at this movie through the lens of like what we're seeing on the camera is supposed to be real, and so what we're hearing on the camera should be real as well. And it's just like an extra, it's a level of artifice which kind of takes me out of like, this is a found footage. Like in the Blair Witch Project, we don't hear orchestral score coming in to scare us. It's literally supposed to be found footage from these people lost in the woods. Right?
When they play that orchestral score when it started, all I could think about was episode 1. For some reason, I was just like, wait a second. I was like, are they playing the song that like, the Obi-Wan or whatever, or whoever dies?
Yeah.
And then I was just
Liam Neeson, yeah, Qui-Gon Jinn, he's toast. Yeah. Spoilers for episode 1, Star Wars, The Phantom Menace, It
would have been a pretty big flex if they just put that song in there. So
yeah.
Disappointed.
But yeah, like I said, we're kind of talking around it. I have a lot of cons. I have a lot of pros. Similar to yourself, this is like a qualified recommendation for me. If kind of what we've discussed or, danced around sounds like something that you'd want to check out, then check it out. If you're a found footage horror fan and you basically like staring at a black screen with a little flashlight for large portions of the movie, then check it out. If that's something you're not into, I don't know if it's necessarily you're missing out on this huge thing, even though there is some pretty cool ideas. And yeah, so a qualified recommendation from myself. Seems like a qualified recommendation from you as well. And with that, I think it's time to cut to the spoiler discussion for The Outwaters. So we are now in the spoiler discussion for The Outwaters. So if you have not seen the movie, it's time to tune out and come back once you've seen it, or keep listening if you simply don't care. Rowan, you mentioned that you probably have a lot more to talk about in the spoiler-filled discussion, so have at it. What do you want to say?
So, like we said, in the spoiler-free section, we talked about 56 minutes before something happens. I'd say at 55 minutes, I was saying your name with a lot of curse words in it. And I was just like, fuck, man. Like, this is brutal. But I'm here. If you watch the movie, I'm curious what everyone else will think. But once it gets rocking, I was totally on board. And I was like, fuck, I'm loving every minute of this. I love how ambiguous everything is. I can't see anything. All I know is there's these like tremor dick worms just squiggling around.
I'm going to stop you right there because you said tremors, and I literally one of my notes is, were those bloody little snakes? ? Is this a secret Tremors reboot? Which, keep going. Sorry, I just had to say that.
My note specifically was, is this a found footage Tremors and or a killer earthworms movie?
There you go, yeah.
But I really appreciate it because of the ambiguity, because, for the most part, we're hearing like these, whatever they are, like worms or whatever. I guess it really is going to depend on, after you watch this movie, what your takeaway is. Because it seems like everyone I looked at had 8 million different ideas of what actually was going on in this movie. Which I think these worms might be the very least of these characters' issues, because there also seems to be like some time traveling, some body snatching, maybe,
yeah, doppelganger ganger stuff for sure, yeah.
And we're also like some weird, like throwing some demonic possession stuff going on, which I think for me, the conversation, the spoiler section, I was just kind of interested in your thoughts and like, what do you think actually narratively happened in this story?
So my response to this is kind of boring, I'm going to be honest. Are you familiar with the Dyatlov's Pass incident? Like that like famous story of the campers in Russia back in the day? Like,
no,
I don't know.
No.
Like, okay. So there's a famous incident back in the day where essentially a bunch of really highly skilled hikers went hiking a pass in Russia, and essentially like these people were like some of the best mountain climbers, like some of the best like survivalists for these sorts of conditions, and for some reason they all died. Like literally there was about, I don't know, half a dozen of them or something, and literally they were all found naked. They were out in the woods / scattered all about. They experienced a lot of like blunt force trauma that didn't seem like it was from like a human. So anyways, it spawned all these like numerous theories, and one of the most prevailing theories to me that was basically that
Tremors?
Where they were was tremors. Yeah, it was the little earthworms burrowing through the snow. But no, there was a prevailing theory that was basically there was military testing going on in the area, that when they were sleeping it caused a disturbance / it caused them to kind of be like leave their tents, and when they left their tents they all got hypothermia and essentially scattered about, and it was like blizzard conditions, they all froze to death and whatnot. And this movie, it kind of directly pays homage to that with, near the end of the movie, it's kind of like, I think it's like some sand gets displaced or whatnot, and you see a sign that talks about military testing, and you see a gas mask. So for me, it was kind of like, oh, I wonder if there was military testing in the area. I wonder if it was an airborne like pathogen or some sort of hallucinogenic that essentially drove the cameraman, Robbie, crazy, I guess, or because I think he also discovers the axe, or he is, at least the camera discovers the axe. He knows the axe is there up on the ledge and nobody takes it. So it's kind of a boring explanation. For me, it's like, yeah, he was hallucinating. He murdered his friends. He keeps saying he's sorry throughout the movie. So there's, the movie's kind of putting him in this hell that he's kind of like paying for. Where do the little earthworms come into it? I'm not quite sure. He does get hit in the head, but then it's also like he was hit in the head. The camera wasn't damaged. Do we believe what we're seeing on the camera in this movie? Because once again, that violates a found footage film. So it's strange. It's like one of those things where that is, I think, the most rational explanation for what happens in the movie. But a lot of the visuals we see, I don't know if it always supports that. I do think kind of like the lights flashing like from flashlights. It would be fine if like you were in like a restricted area or something. Like that is what you would see when people were stumbling up on you. And I think a lot of the loud noises that they're talking about and the earthquakes and stuff, it could be seismic activity. It could be some sort of military testing and whatnot, because that's what the people reported in Dyatlov's Pass as well. So I don't know, maybe it's just my familiarity with that instance, but that's kind of what I took away from it. Did you have any, formalized thoughts on it? Like, did you have an interpretation of the movie that maybe is a little bit more interesting than that? Or,
I took the worms kind of actually being there. So, I mean, I think I was looking at it more of some sort of like cosmic horror.
Yeah.
Where I was like, okay, like obviously, I was thinking more of like an Area 51 situation where like maybe this is like something that the military like, were experimenting on or something, and that these creatures somehow have there's some sort of technology or something in this area that's allowing like this sort of like time travel, whether that's space time travel or interdimensional or other altered dimensions. There's a couple different areas. Like I said, I once I finished watching it, I just kind of was like, I need to see what everyone's talking about with this. I remember I do want to shout out, there was a very intricate one I like that we watched a movie on YouTube did. And the overall theory was that all these booms that they hear throughout the night is that actually there's like an alien invasion outside of this area, and like basically they're in the middle of the desert, so they don't know what's going on in the outside world, and it's basically, the effects of this war in the rest of the world, like coming into this area. And then that's the sound of like every night you're hearing these explosions and booms, and of course, they're not really knowing what's going on. Do I think it's that? I'd probably not, but I just thought it was creative.
Say, I did get weirdly enough alien invasion vibes at earlier in the movie for sure. It's just kind of some of the things that say like where they say like the camera battery isn't draining in this area and there's like an electricity to the soil, which maybe seemed like there was probably something beneath, maybe a nuclear reactor or a spaceship or something. There was like, I was expecting some sort of reveal with that. And I do agree that maybe the worms actually could exist, because that would still kind of work with the military thing. Like maybe they were trying to gas out and get rid of whatever was in that area, and it drove whatever was in that area to burrow into the ground. Who knows? So I don't know. It could be literal or not. Yeah.
Of course, without, any kind of movie like this, I guess I go to the rational, idea of that. I'm like, okay, well, what I do know is that it's probably like 5 of these things bunched in one, because he doesn't.
Oh, 100%.
He doesn't want you to have any idea.
To have an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, I do think this movie, and you're going to disagree with this, I can almost guarantee it. I do think if this movie was a little bit more directed and did have some sort of idea or something that it was trying to say, I think some of it may have been a little bit more effective for me. Like, I think if it was something that was like, okay, he did go crazy, he was still talking to his friends' severed heads that were in the, in the tent still and stuff, I think some sort of reveal or something near the end may have helped. Obviously do it and like package it in some unsettling video or visuals and, make it scary still, but it was kind of like when I finished watching it, I was like, yeah, some scary shit, some weird shit, pretty effective, but what's the point in a way? Like, I kind of shrugged. I was like, what was the point? The last hour was fairly good, but what was it saying, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, I'm kind of on record for a lot of this stuff. I like the weird, ambiguous,
The vibe, yeah.
the vibe. Now, I mean, this still goes back to the same thing. I think the time kills this. The 2 hour, like almost 2 hour runtime. There should have been 20 minutes shave somewhere.
So what I'll push back on this, because, you know, I don't necessarily disagree. It's just you kind of spoke positively about how you actually get a lot of time to really like meet these characters and know them intimately. Shaving back on that, maybe you wouldn't feel the same about like getting to know the characters and whatnot. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and now, of course, now I'm kind of arguing with myself now, because now I'm thinking maybe you're right in terms of maybe the 20 minutes need to be shaved off, making it less ambiguous and more directed, so that the horror could kind of, you know, terrify you. Because at first, I'm not going to lie, like when we see whatever the hell was going on with this monster, that we get, you know, the small ass camera light exploring its body.
With the noises and stuff, I thought it had something to do with the donkeys, obviously, right? Because the donkeys
so did I.
3 or 4 times. I was like, okay, is this like... you know, like in The Thing, where you get like the amalgamation of all the dogs, you know, it's like, is something to do with a donkey? But then you see the donkeys later and they seem fine. So I don't know. No clue. Yeah, I think you hear donkey sound effects during that scene.
And you can hear them like breathing and stuff.
Yeah.
And this is where, to me, like I had a little help because I did have the captions on with it.
Okay.
So like in that scene, like I know in the captions, it's like, you know, donkeys like panting, so I'm like, all right, something's going on with these donkeys, and there's like something going on with them. But, you know, it was things like that I thought was funny, because as it was going on, I'm like really frustrated, because I'm like, you know, just stop fucking moving. I'm just trying to see what this thing looks like.
Exactly. You want to see an eyeball, you want to see some teeth, you want to see something to define what it is.
But then when it's done, I'm like, all right, I guess like it actually did kind of work, because I enjoyed it, because I was like, yeah, like I'm frustrated, but I'm frustrated putting myself in the movie. A big thing I did want to talk about that I thought was very well done, and obviously, you know, I would rave about it, is I did love like that last 5 minutes of the movie where
all the gore.
Yeah. The severed penis, big surprise for me, because I had no idea what he was doing at first. Like I just saw him cut up his leg, and I'm like, oh, what's he doing there? And
for losing so much blood and whatnot, he was packing some heat there too. For a second, I was like, what is this? Is this a little arm or something? And then okay, all right, I see what this is.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I thought it looked fantastic. I really love wonderful dick. I loved like the scene with the severed heads on the
pikes,
on the pikes. I really love the shot of them further away more so than I did up close. Like I just thought that shot was gorgeous, and just that whole scene, him like disemboweling himself, and that's where I was really leaning into what you were going into, of what you thought was literally happening in this movie, where I'm like, yeah, this guy's literally just kind of gone insane.
Yeah, like he does get smacked in the head as well, right? Like, or you know, you got to buy into something. Like, you got to buy into the time loop. You got to buy into doppelganger stuff. You got to buy into maybe a crazed guy with an axe hit him in the head. But, you know, regardless of how or what happened, like clearly this guy is out of his mind for most of the movie, right? Like he's just mumbling to himself and staggering around most of the movie, confused, right?
Yeah, and that's where so much of this camera work and the lighting work and everything was effective, because obviously there's something going on with this guy. Like he's nuts, so it doesn't matter what's going on. And if anything, watching an hour of this like just crazy film, I'm like, I kind of feel nutso like this guy too.
Yeah, like it does a good job conveying that for sure. Like, and, you also see he does turn the camera around at one point too and kind of like check his head. And once again, due to how dark the movie is, I don't know if there's actually a cut on his head or not when he's checking. And he is covered in blood, but also like he's sleeping in the tents with his, dead friends all covered in blood and whatnot, right? So it could be from him bleeding, or it could be from since he committed the acts himself. But it seemed like you were going to say something.
I was going to say, though, one of the only real big cons I had in the spoiler section, I guess I really could have maybe talked about in the spoiler-free section, was the upside down camera angle, man. I think he did it too much. I was just like... I was like, there's long periods of this upside down camera, but it's like multiple times in the movie where like, just pick one time and go with it. Like, I thought it was effective. We get this camera angle in, Midsommar. So many other movies.
I was going to say, Midsommar is what popularized it, and now it's all over the place these last 5 years.
Yeah, definitely for current times. And then, like, I get the callbacks, like The Shining also does it.
Of course, yes.
All that. But yeah, I was just like, maybe once I'd be like, cool, man. But yeah, it's like 3 or 4 times in this movie. And I do get, like, it's very disorienting because I have no fucking idea what's going on. But, yeah, I was just like, maybe like some different angles or something. Just something to spice it up a bit.
One of the times that angle is used is when he's chasing after Michelle. When she's in the dress and he's just running after her, like in the plains, you see her kind of slumped on the ground and then he starts chasing her. And I really like that scene as well. Like, once again, that kind of does go back to the more literal interpretation of the movie that maybe at some point he did have chase on Michelle, right? Like chasing her with the axe or whatever, right? So there's all these hints throughout the movie. And obviously there's a part in the movie too where he does feel some sort of guilt as well because he goes back to, I think it's his mother's house right at like one point. And he's like apologizing and all that stuff. So I don't know. I think there is literally a literal interpretation of just this guy got fucked up in some method, some way, and then he just went crazy. And we're just kind of seeing the degradation of his sanity. And for some reason, that's also being present in the camera. Like also like for some reason the score is in here, right? It's just, once again, if you're going to break one rule, maybe it breaks multiple rules. I don't know.
I said before we started recording that I would, I said a little Newfoundland shout out going on here that I don't think
I missed.
I wasn't looking for it. So basically, if you look in the special thanks, he thanks Stephen Dunn in this. Which,
okay.
So at first I was like, oh, like that's kind of weird. And I'm like trying to look. I'm like, do these guys have something in common? And I mean, I guess they would know each other because, like, Robbie Banfitch is a LGBTQ director. He's a gay man, and I would assume they've probably crossed paths with Steven kind of, brushing against horror. I know he's a big horror fan. So, I thought that was, like, a cool little connection that he got a shout out at the end as a special thanks. So I'd be very curious. Now I feel like at some point I'll have to write Steven and be like, did you have anything to do with this movie?
Yeah. How were you involved, or how do you know him, or did you put him in touch with somebody to get this thing made, or...
We're going to have to finally have him on and just, like, read him the Miranda Act about it. And,
we got to get him on at some point anyways. It's only a matter of time.
And find out. Exactly. But, yeah, no. And my real last note was I thought the song it ended with was kind of a banger. I was like, I thought I did like to see, like, the still shots, which are... kind of like what you said, they're, just kind of behind the scenes shots, but then also tie into the film because when we're in the desert shooting, Robbie says that, oh yeah, like I can just make the video in the still shots for like promo and album covers. So, but yeah, I kind of like the vibe of it. And
yeah, I mean, it makes it feel more authentically like these people went missing or that you're reviewing footage. And once again, it also works for a little indie horror movie that, like, oh, these are behind the scenes photos, maybe, who knows, right? It works both ways.
Yeah.
Before we review it, I want to mention a couple of things. Did you notice the dead pixels in the beginning of the movie for the first like 10-15 minutes on the screen? I'm just curious.
I didn't.
Okay.
But
there's
I
multiple
not
dead
paying
pixels.
Attention that much.
Yeah, like there was enough that like it made me pause and like check my monitor and stuff like that, and I was like, oh, God, it's another one of these movies where it has like one dead pixel. It's when Michelle is singing her song, it's like smack dab on the mic, and then as the camera moves a little bit, it's like on her nose, so it's literally like a focal point. And there's also 2 or 3 like clustered in like a couple of scenes after that. And I was just kind of like, ever since Army of the Dead a few years ago, I've been noticing dead pixels like far more often in a lot of movies. And I wonder if it's just like they're recording with such high resolution cameras that like they're not really pixel peeping on the day to make sure like all the pixels are fine. But it was a little distracting. I'm really glad that it was only for the beginning of the movie. Like, essentially, I guess maybe when they were filming in one or two locations, whatever camera they had rented was a little bit wonky.
It sounds to me like you just need to open a new business where you just check for dead pixels for people.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'll show them how to work After Effects. I could paint over that one pixel, you know? And I know how to do that for sure. Also, I got some David Lynch vibes on the ethereal singing woman. Did you get that as well?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of a funny moment because they go like, you sound just like your mom. And I'm like, did your mom use like shitloads of auto-tune? Or, you know, like that's a weird compliment.
I kind of felt bad for her because, you know, other than the Robbie character, I kind of felt like the friends weren't really into her singing as much. Like, they showed a scene where they were like clapping and they were kind of just like half-ass clapping. And I was like, yeah, these guys are not into it. They're
here to support her artistic journey, but, you know, they're not fans. Yeah. And the one other thing I want to point out is the bramble bush scene or the thorn bush scene, whatever it is. You know, it's when Robbie kind of like, he's too afraid to look at whatever's behind him. And he's like hunched down in the bushes and he's all cut up and bloody. And he turns around and at the time, all you see is another pair of bloody legs. I thought that was a really good horror scene. At that point in the movie, I was already thinking like, time loop or doppelganger or like, oh, this might be another version of him, something like that. But it was still really effective. I thought it was a great horror moment, and also it comes back a little bit later in the movie, obviously, when you get it from the opposite point of view. So yeah, there's some sort of time loop thing here. I think there's something going on, but once again, I can't really put my finger on what it is. But yeah, I enjoyed that. But yeah, anything else you want to say before we get into reviewing this or rating this?
No, I think I'm good. Let's get her in done.
So if you're new to the podcast, our review rubric is nay, okay, yay, or slay. So Rowan, what would you give The Outwaters?
I think I'm gonna give it a yay.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it. Like I said, the first bit, even though I do really appreciate the character building once I'm into the horror, I appreciate it. At the time, you know, like I said, I was cursing you out. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, is anything ever gonna happen in this movie? But once it hits, it's crazy. To me, I would highly suggest, like, this is a watch it at night, put your headphones on, like, get me.
Oh no, you're doing the skinamarink.
The skinamarink. No, but I mean, I think, you know, one thing they made sure is that the sound on this is really well done. It's very disorienting. It helps with the confusion because, like we said, this is a very dark movie. You can't see much other than kind of a flashlight circle's worth of stuff. So it's really about the sound that's going on around you. So, you know, I thought they did that pretty effectively. Like I said, I enjoy kind of hard to grasp concept movies that are vibes. And I was on the level of this. I'm very interested to see, you know, where he'll go next in another film. I would be very interested in not a found footage film and just kind of seeing this kind of weird, but in a more traditional layout. So yeah, I'll give it a pretty strong yay. I really enjoyed this. What would you rate it?
Yeah, I'm a little less hot on it than you. I'd give it an okay. As we discussed it, I was going back and forth because honestly, I enjoyed talking about this movie with you more than probably I enjoyed the whole experience watching it. Like I said, I did enjoy the latter half of it. It was just kind of, I wanted a little bit something more out of it. And just as a found footage horror fan, when certain things were being violated or I wasn't sure if I could believe what was being captured on film or the score, you know, there was just, you know, some little things that kept me from truly enjoying all of my time with it. But I do echo what you said. I would love to see Robbie Banfitch kind of take his horror taste, his style to a more traditional film. And I think that this movie still has a lot to offer in terms of some good scares, some weird ass imagery, some good horror moments. And I mean, for found footage, I've seen a hell of a lot worse than this. So yeah, it's an okay from me. Yeah, and you know, maybe on a second watch, or you know, maybe learning a little bit more what his intentions are, it might even be a yay. But for now, it's an okay.
I'm hoping that we'll get a Outwaters 2 with a guest appearance from Kevin Bacon.
Why Kevin Bacon? What reference am I missing?
Tremors, man. Tremors.
Oh, God. Okay, yeah, the obvious one. All right. Okay, I got you.
Let's get him in there. If you want these dick worms gone, there's only one man to do the job, so...
Fair. And if you made it this far and you're not following us on social media already, you can do so at It Slays Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Slasher, Letterboxd. If there's a social media, we're on there at It Slays Podcast. And if you want to support the show, like our horror hounds Holly and Nicholas gain access to the Patreon exclusive show Stream Screams and get access to episodes of our main show 48 hours early, be sure to head on over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. Now, Rowan, go ahead and plug the playlist.
So if you're into spooky music or music from horror movies that we review or iconic horror movies and just scores, anything, go to the It Slays Podcast horrific playlist on Spotify. If you have any problems finding it, you can also find it in our link tree, which is on all our social media. And yeah, go follow it. We update it often. I don't know, obviously, if one of these songs makes it or not. They're kind of not really spooky, but, you know, there's a couple bangers on there. We'll see. But yeah, go get your spooky music on and enjoy.
What I didn't mention is I did like that he was singing the music video song at the end, and when he framed up the 3 severed heads on the pikes and he started singing the lyrics. That was really good. I should have mentioned that when we were actually discussing it, but that was good. I really enjoyed that.
That was good.
And next time on the show, I think we're going to be covering the new Netflix family comedy horror movie, We Have a Ghost. I don't know if that'll actually be scary. I don't know if it'll be good. I guess we'll have to wait and see. So look forward to that later this week. And with that, I think that about wraps things up for this episode. So until next time, I'm Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And as long as you keep listening, we'll keep slaying.